Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Real Estate Agent Advantage. I am joined today by a very special guest. We only got to know each other about a month ago or so. I started using some of your services several months ago and was quite impressed, especially after a call that we had. We had a great connection, I found. And we just got through with doing an episode on your podcast. So we're going to get to it right now. Beatty Carmichael, thank you so much for joining us on the Real Estate Agent Advantage today.
Well, Lauren, thank you. I am thrilled to be here and thrilled with our conversation about a month or so ago because how much we have in common. It was really a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And even through the podcast episode that we just recorded for your podcast, we learned that we have even more in common. So while we're talking about your podcast, why don't you plug it to everybody out there?
Yeah, so I do a podcast. It's called Get Sellers Calling You. And it's all about, can you guess, getting sellers calling you. Okay. So Get Sellers Calling You. And you can hit that and subscribe to it. Everything we do is focused on how do you get more listings. Actually, almost everything is focused. So
Right.
It's kind of back and forth. You may find during this call, I'll go in and promote it. I'm an unabashed Christian. And so some of the podcasts will have some Bible teaching if you have interest, but you can skip those if you don't have interest on that.
There you go. All right. Fantastic. So let's get into it. Why don't we tell people a little bit about your background in life and in business that has led you into the real estate industry? So
Yeah.
give people a little rundown of who you are and where you come from.
Okay. So I don't know how far back to go, but the bottom line was, okay, I grew up in a wealthy surgeon's family. He was the top surgeon in his specialty, pretty much including over Mayo Clinic. So we had a nice lifestyle. I get to college and think anyone, no one can live under 100,000 a year income. And I learned my lesson once I got through college and got a job and thought, oh, not everyone has that type of lifestyle. And but I wanted to get back to it. And I couldn't figure out how because I had a history degree and you don't get paid much in history. So I started to learn about marketing. And marketing was a concept where you could take something that works and just scale up the marketing and it works more and it can produce more recurring income, even if it's a one-time sale. So that got me excited. I started involved with several businesses trying to figure it out. Business attempt number 11 was this business that we started in 1997. And or it might have been attempt number 13, but it was somewhere in there. And we were working in the home business and the small business industry. We ended up having just great success. I developed a marketing tool that would generate new prospects that these people could make sales to. And it was uncommon. It was not uncommon that they would double, triple, quadruple their sales results within 4 months. And so as a result, our business went from just a few customers to 2.5 years later, we had 3,500 customers all throughout the US and Canada. And then when we had the credit crunch and the whole market industry shifted, we pivoted and moved that same technology into real estate. This was in 2012, 2013, right in that time frame. And I started to look and say, where is the real estate industry most underserved? And what I found is everyone had a way to get buyers, but no one could figure out how to get listings, not systematically. And I said, well, this is easy. I mean, because it's the same thing we've been doing for 15 years up to that point. So we decided to launch with a geographic farming product using the same approach of good quality best practices and direct response marketing, flavored with some technology and stealth technology to make it work. And we started having agents come on board with us in the first year, starting to earn about $100,000 in their first year in geographic farming, which I found later was kind of unheard of as well. Most people take a year or two to get their first listing. And so from there, we've expanded. Everything we do is marketing based, understanding the formula. How do you persuade someone to go from where they are mentally to where you want them to be mentally, so they choose you. And we've gone from there and expanded into other markets. But bottom line, what we do is we sell postcards but we use this market-driven, performance-driven approach, and it's like postcards on steroids. But so that's probably a small synopsis of me and my business.
Well, I can tell you're very analytically minded, and I know
Very
that,
much so.
yeah. And with your approach to marketing, I know that you're always A/B testing things and changing things and tweaking them. And so, there are different approaches. The model used to be that we'll talk specifically to geographic farming right now. In an area, it was look at my face, I'm number one, and keep throwing out that postcard, however often you throw it out. Um, but I think people really get tired of, hey, look at me, I'm number one at attendance, like everyone seems to be number one at something. More, what is it for the end consumer?
Right.
Where's the value there for them when you just, I'm number one? It tells people, I guess, that you have some experience, but you're taking a slightly different approach. And I've heard that approach from others as well. So is your approach mostly then unbranded in the sense that you're downplaying the person and more the value to the client? What is the general
Yeah, that's a great
concept?
question. So there's actually two things that we're doing, and they're both totally separate, but when you combine them together, you have a synergy. That's what I call 1 + 1 = 3. So one thing that we're doing, what we did initially, that is kind of the mainstay of the fast results that we do, is a direct response. And you have a simple equation just to kind of share the two patterns. In direct response, you have a headline that interrupts, engage, educates, and offer, and get them to then respond. And we've developed, you mentioned split testing and a lot of testing. We did 21 split marketing tests, over 2 million postcards, to identify the types of headlines that work, the fonts, the offers, and really narrowing it down to what works best. So that's one category of what we're doing, Lauren. The other thing, and by the way, that has nothing, this is brand less. It has nothing to do with the brand, except unless you move out west, it has everything to do with the brand. I can go into detail if you want. It is analytical. But the
Please
other
do.
side, yeah, well, you're over there laughing because I know you're a big person, big picture
Oh,
person.
I like
Uh,
details as well. I just don't think that way, but I welcome them. So please.
okay, great. So the other thing we do is another concept in marketing, which is the more important thing for long term. Okay, you can get short term results right off the bat, make some money, but if you want to maintain long term results and actually own that farm, it's a totally different part of marketing. It's a concept known as outside perception versus inside reality. And it works a little bit different, but let me share a story that kind of articulates that if I can.
Please.
So you're talking about the typical agent that says, I'm going to get my name out there everywhere. So one of our clients, he owned a team. It was a small team up in New England area. I think the year that we were working with them, they only did 1,200 transactions at that time. So kind of a small team, right? And he was the team leader. His name is Jason. And he was marketing to a group of, I think it was 2,000 homes. And he'd been spending $10,000 a month for 2 years in that area. And he started to do some postcard marketing. It didn't work for the first 6 months. So he called me up and said, is there anything you can do? And I said, probably so. So we got on a phone call. It was me and Jason and his assistant, and I think her name was Pam. But what happened on the phone call is I was asking some questions, and I said, well, Jason, the problem is you're not well branded. Wrong word, right word, wrong interpretation by him. He said, oh, no, I'm real branded. That cannot be it. So I said, well, what do you mean? He said, Beatty, I've been spending $10,000 a month for 2 years in this area. I'm on the radio, I'm on the billboards, I'm in the gas stations, I'm at the grocery stores, I'm on the park benches. I do a 12-page newsletter every quarter. I'm well branded. I said, okay, well, let me ask you, how many listings came on the market in this 6-month period that we're talking about? He said about 200. And how many of those listings did you get? He said about 2. I said, so why did they not choose you over someone else? And there was this pregnant pause. And he said, I don't know. I said, would you like to know why they did not choose you? And what do you think he said?
Of course.
Yeah, of course. So I began to explain to him this concept of outside perception versus inside reality, because this is the crux with all real estate agents, whether you're targeting your met list or your not met list, as Gary likes to call it, or whatever it is that you're doing. And I started to explain to him, I said, Jason, the problem is all of those homeowners in that community, they look at you like every other agent. They think that you're just like every other agent because they're in their belief system, all agents are the same. All they do is stick a sign in the yard, list the home in the MLS, and wait for someone else to bring a buyer. I said, but imagine for a moment that all of those agents knew your skill, expertise, and experience to the same degree that Pam knows it, because she's been his admin assistant for 10 years. And that they all understood the level of expertise, how much experience, this training you've had, the little nuances and things that you do that push it even more to your client's benefit. If all of those homeowners understood you the way Pam understands you, how many of those listings do you think you would have gotten? And before he could reply, Pam piped up and said, all of them. And that is the problem. So back to your question, what are we doing? Are we branding to them? Are we branding, showing the value to the consumer? The answer is yes. The question is, how do you shift that perspective that you're just one of everyone else to where they feel in their mind that they would be a fool to choose any other agent besides you? Can I tell you one short story, not as long as Jason's? So
Please.
we were applying this with an agent down in Miami area in Florida. And the guy's name is Roman. He's targeting this gated community of 12 or 1,500 homes, average sales price $800,000. And we're using this approach. He calls me up and says, Beatty, I got another listing, but I got to tell you about this one. So what's up? He said, this home is the listing I got, obviously they live in Heron Bay. But the homeowner's friend is an agent in Heron Bay who had listed the home. They've been getting my postcards, and they both thought that I would do a better job selling it. So she gave me the listing.
Really?
When you can convince an agent that you would do a better job for their friend than she could, that's transferring your inside reality to become their outside perception. That is the mother lode. If you want long-term dominance in any list that you're targeting, that's where the mother lode is.
So let's dig into that a little bit, into the nitty gritty, if you will, because I've been doing geographic farming for myself for quite a while as well, and I've studied others that have done it in different ways. So the challenge that people have is, number one, which area do you choose to farm? Number two, how many postcards should you be sending out? Number three, how regularly or how often should you be doing it? So let's start with those three. So how do you
Okay.
choose where to go?
Yeah. So let me state up front, these are good. They're the basics that are necessities, but they're not the key differentiators.
No, of course.
They include the key differentiators. So the way you find the farm, geographic farming is an investment. If you're going to buy some stocks, are you just going to pick a stock because you like the company, or are you going to do some research and see what the stock price history has been and what it looks like it's going to be going?
Of
You're going
course,
to
you're
do
going
some
to do some
research, right?
research. Yeah.
Yeah. So the research on a farm is simple in geographic farming. It's basically, there's 6 different things you can get to be very precise, but there are only 2 things that are most important. And that is, you look at the turnover rate and you look at the average sales price. And so the most important thing is you don't just pick one farm, you pick 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different places that you're considering to farm, and you run a quick analysis. What's the turnover rate? Turnover rate, for those who don't know, you look at it, easiest way to do this is over a 12-month period. You say, how many sales happen in the last 12 months, and divide that by the number of homes in that farm, okay? So easy math, you have 30 sales, you have 300 homes, 30 divided by 300, 10% turnover. So you calculate the turnover rate, and then you take the average sales price that sold in that time frame, and you multiply them together, it gives you what I call the sales turnover rate. Okay, um, and that gives you a financial number. And what that does is it puts every single one of those farms that you're contemplating on an apples to apples basis. It takes all of the variations out, and you're looking at the economic value of that farm. And the farm that has the highest economic value, all else being equal, that farm is going to produce the highest return for you. Once you get there, then probably the next most important thing is just to look at and see who is the number one listing agent. Is there any agent that's really dominant, 20, 30, 40%? If it is, ignore that farm and go somewhere else where it's easy. But those two things are the most important thing.
Okay, great. There are, again, different approaches that work for different people. There are some that say if there is only one dominant person, then, go after them because people are going to want an alternative. But generally speaking, yeah, you steer away from that. It's very difficult in my market to find anyone that's truly dominant, other than in little micro areas. Now, in
Right.
terms of size of the farm itself, what would you recommend somebody start with? I've heard anywhere from 500 up to 10,000.
Yeah, so it all depends on budget. So if I'm talking to someone who's got the budget to do it, um, 100%, almost 100%, almost 100% of every person that we've worked with that's generated $100,000 in their first year in farming, we're targeting around 1,000 homes or a little bit more. So where I'm going is, if you want to make cash quickly, you need to reach out to more people so you have more opportunities at the few nibbles that you'll get getting started, that one of those nibbles will turn into a sale and cash flow your farm for the rest of the year. But don't stretch it. The most important thing is that you're comfortable with whatever budget it is, and you can sustain that budget for 6 months to a year without getting a sale out of it yet. Okay, that's going to be the most important thing, because if you're nervous, you're going to quit early, and you've lost all of the momentum that you built into that farm if you quit early. So start at a point that budget-wise, you can comfortably handle 6 to 12 months.
Absolutely. And I've heard as much as, a year to 18 months to really start to get any traction in
Not if you do it our
geographic
way.
farm.
18
Well,
months is just impossible. I mean, yeah, yeah.
I like that.
That's right. If you do it our way with what we do, 12 months is it. I mean, you'll be getting listings by the 12th month, or it's not working. Okay,
So you're
trust
doing
me.
it in terms of regularity, you're doing it monthly, correct?
Well, so there are two ways we recommend 18 times a year. So we did a study on this when we first entered into this industry in real estate. Because farming was our focus, we just dug into every bit of research we could find. And what we found is those people who were consistent farmers, the minimum was 12 times a year. So postcard mailings, you do more than just postcard mailings, but if you look at just postcard mailings, is 12 times a year on the minimum, 24 times a year on the maximum. But they all seem to average in the middle. That 18 times a year was about right. What we've seen since then is when you start a farm, you front load it, get 18 mailings plus your other touches in that first year. Once you got traction, then you can start to pull it back and easily maintain it at just one mailing a year. What you're dealing with is this thing called positioning. If you read the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, Gary calls it mindshare dominance. It's the same thing, but it originates from a marketing book called Positioning that was published in the 1980s. And what it says that the average person can only remember 3 brands. And once they remember you as a brand, then you don't have to push as much effort to keep them remembering you. And so what you're really doing with your first year or so is to get your brand well established, not the brand like Jason thought it was just getting your name out, but the reasons why they should do business with you, so that now they remember, they know that you're better than anyone else, and they start to think, I would be a fool to choose anyone besides this person. Once you get your brand established in that positioning mindset, then you can start to pull back on your expense and just keep it going. If you think an easy way to understand this, most people have ridden in a motorboat. If you throw the throttle halfway, you'll never plane. Okay, you'll just dig all your energy, creating a great big weight behind you. But if you want to get up and go fast and at the least amount of effort, you throw the throttle forward, give it all the effort you can so it gets it out of the water and planing. And once it builds up speed, then you can pull the throttle back halfway and you keep cruising at 40 miles an hour. That's kind of the way it is with farming. All your effort goes in up front, get the branding up, the positioning, then you can pull back on the expense and you'll just keep riding the wave. It's really cool.
Fantastic analogy. That's great. Now, in terms of breaking down the content that you're sending out, it's very challenging to once you find your thing, your farm, and you decide this is the plan. I need to do it, every other week, and then slowly, back that off. So about 18 times a year. What is the thing that's going to make your content stand out to the person's eyes? Because we've all been at the mailbox every week with all these quote unquote junk postcards for pizza and for everything else. What's effective in catching somebody's attention?
That's a very good question. Would you like to guess how many versions of content we have gone through, experimented, tested to get to where we are now on what we call version 9.3?
I couldn't even imagine, but you tell me.
Probably 27 to 40 different versions, trying to figure out what is the formula. The formula, what you're looking for, Lorne, is not only the formula of what is the content that persuades, but how do you articulate the content? So you have what's the message that persuades? How do you articulate that message? And how do you lay out the postcard to easily and most effectively convey that message? And so you
Right.
got a lot of things moving. But to kind of give you a short answer of a very broader question, what you're looking for are people want to know that you know what you're doing. Let me just pause real quickly. Okay, we've been talking for just a few minutes. I don't know how long. I lose track of times when I get excited. But can you tell that I understand what I do just from so far from our conversation?
Absolutely.
Okay. What causes you to think I really understand what I do both in farming and in marketing? What if you could encapsulate it, what is it that's coming across to you?
That you've done your work, your research, and you know the numbers, and you convey it with passion and with certainty.
Okay, great. So what you're hearing, and I'm going to add my terms to what you just said, is I can clearly articulate step by step what is going on and why it's important. What that does is for the consumer, for the recipient of that information, it says this guy understands it because he's able to break it down, and each step that he breaks down has a specific reason. And when I'm able to articulate why each of these steps are important, then you're absorbing it as this guy understands it. So the most important thing we've found in articulating this for our clients, by the way, just to give a background of how we do this. So our company name is Agent Dominator. You'll see us agentdominator.com. Not trying to put a plug in, but just to bring some formatting into it. And what we do for our clients on the postcard is we identify what they do in best practices. And then we use this approach to build out their postcards. So when they go out, they make an impact. And what we find is the key denominators are lists. If you can break down what you do into a list and articulate why each of those lists is important, okay, for example, uh, uh, John sells, my home sell for top dollar because of the 4 steps of marketing home that I do. Step number 1 is pricing. Pricing is the most important thing because the price you offer determines if you're hitting the price at the right price that they're going to pay, or if it's too high, you're going to have to drop it too far. If it's too low, you lose money. So you price it right. Then there's preparation, okay? And preparation, you describe that. Then there's promotion, and you have to describe what promotion is and how you promote it, and then all the different follow through. So when you can bullet point it out and give 2 sentences of each things that are impactful sentences, what conveys in a very short amount of content is this guy gets it. And then maybe another sale comes out. I sold this home with 3 offers, $10,000 over list price because of these things. Here's what I did. And you go through and put a list of 5 different things that you did on this home, specific things that you did that were specific to that home. And what this does is it takes that homeowner who's receiving that postcard and they go, wow, that makes sense. And what is happening is most people don't send out a just sold postcard. Most people don't even let you know that they sold a home in your neighborhood.
Right.
Okay. It's just, they assume that, hey, if you want to know if I sell a house, look for my sign. It's up to you. Other agents who do it right are going to send out a just sold postcard said, I just sold a home, but they do it wrong. I mean, not they do it wrong, but they don't know how to articulate the sale. You send out that just sold postcard, but then you articulate the steps that you took to sell it for top dollar. And now what happens is that homeowner remembers it because it's so unique and it makes sense. And they go, this guy knows what he's doing. And every sale you push out is always a top of the market sale. And they remember that. So now what's happening is in your branding, what I call branding, most agents don't understand, is your positioning, is you're giving them reasons why they should remember you. And now the more they see that, that positioning goes to the top of their mind and they go, I'd be a fool to choose any agent besides that guy because he knows what he's doing. It's inside reality becoming their outside perception. So that's what we're doing. Then we're also quantifying things in the MLS. If their list to sales ratio is better, their days on market, we figured out how to make it really simple and fun to understand. So when you can articulate that to someone, it makes dollars and cents difference in their mind. So these are the things. We're taking specific things, my analytical brain, and then we're quantifying it, creating easy content, and that's what goes out to a homeowner.
Fantastic. And that message then is cleared. Now, I have a question for you. Once they get this information and the contact is made, they reach out to the realtor. How would you suggest they effectively follow up with these people in order to really nurture it into a sale? Is there a system that
There,
you've found to be more effective?
there is Whiskers. The yeah, private joke. Sorry, guys. um, it's very important. So it actually depends a lot of times on how they respond. If they're responding to a direct response offer, so like with what we do, every mailing has a direct response offer, so we can identify someone thinking about selling before they reach out to you. That follow-up approach is a modification of if they simply call you up. Ultimately, regardless of how you identify them, they call you or I identify them, your follow-up is really almost the same, okay? So it starts with a face visit. And what we find is if they have met you, they are 8 to 10 times more likely to choose you. We have quantified that backwards and forwards. And your most important thing you can do is actually show up. Second most important thing, if you're not going to show up on their doorstep, at least show up on their telephone and actually speak with them. So if they called you, you get to speak with them. That's easy. Set a face appointment. Even if you can't set a face appointment, drop by unannounced, okay, and get a chance to meet them. Number 2, we developed, we haven't developed, one of my friends developed, and he stole it from someone else. So this has been in development passed down. Right. So I have to say, so you have to understand in English literature, if you take something that someone else created and put it in your content, it's called plagiarism. Okay. In marketing, it's called research. And so what we researched on this stuff, and by the way, let me give you a link because this is a real important packet, and I'm happy for you to download it for free. It's on our website. If you go to getsellerscallingyou.com/visit, okay? The idea is if someone has clicked through and visited your website, we call it a click through, they scan the code, to the direct response offer, they visited your website. There's a very specific process to follow up on that just brings home the listing. But part of this is this what I call the About Me packet, and you can download that for free at getsellerscallingyou.com/visit. But what it is it's a packet of, it's 44 pages long, and I know what's going to happen. Most people listening, that's a lot of material. But hear me out, because this has been critical to winning the listing. And I'll tell you some stories after, but let me explain what it is. It's 44 pages put together of those things that make a homeowner want to choose an agent. All you do is you personalize it to you. If some of those things don't fit you, just take it out. And if some of those things don't match you exactly, modify it so it does. But it's a framework package that you print out and you deliver to that home, and ideally show it with a tin of butter cookies or some brownies or some sort of a nice gift that they can eat. Be sensitive that it's not something, if someone's on a diet, that they're not going to want to eat it. And you show up and you say, hey, I was just out in the neighborhood, and I wanted to give this to you since we spoke on the phone the other day. Okay. If it's a click through, you've never met them yet, they haven't called you. Hey, I'm a real estate agent out in the neighborhood. I'm just out meeting people. I just want to introduce myself. Actually been mailing postcards out here. I don't know if you got any of my postcards. We know they did because they clicked through, but this is the approach. And the whole idea is they've met you, you've given them a nice treat, and most important, you give them this packet of information about you. Let me tell you a couple of stories why this is so important. One of our clients is a guy named Ed. He's out on the West Coast. He just gotten started with us. He had just updated his About Me packet, and he gets a phone call from one of his sphere of influence that this lady was about to sell her $700,000 home. So he calls her up and introduces himself. And she says, I'm sorry, Ed, but I've already picked out my agent, and basically you're too late. He said, I'm sorry about that. Are you under contract with them? No, but we signed a contract in 2 days. He said, well, would you allow me to just email you some information about me? Sure, you can do that. So that's what he did. He emails this packet as a PDF. She calls him back the next day and said, Ed, I got your information. I want you to sell my house. I've called the other agent and canceled with him. Can you be here tomorrow at 2? Okay. And just like the story with Roman that I shared earlier with the postcards, what happens is if you understand the art of your inside reality versus outside perception, it doesn't matter if it's in a postcard or if it's in a packet of information or if it's in a face-to-face. But what this packet does is it wins the deal. When they meet you, they get the packet, it wins the deal. And then that box of cookies is important because it wins the deal in one more instance. A lot of times, if you're in a competitive environment, my friend who gave this information to me, this packet, he was sharing that he does like 100 listings a year or something like that, personal production, okay? And he was sharing, Beatty, when I'm in a one-on-one and when I'm in a competitive environment and I'm one of many people that they're interviewing, said I usually win the deal. And when I do, they often reach over and say, Stuart, it was that box of cookies that got you the deal. So never underestimate the value of that little extra step that warms up the relationship, because ultimately it's a relationship game, but it's a game on, do they trust that you can do the best job, and do they like you as well?
What I want to know are, what are those magical listing cookies called, and where can I get them?
Costco, and they're called butter cookies, and they're in a tin, and they used to cost about $10 or $11 each. My friend would literally buy stacks of them, just keep them in the office and have his, he would not face visit. He didn't have to. So he was doing 120 transactions a year on 35 hours a week.
Wow.
So he didn't work for listings. It was all based on marketing. And so he would just send his admin assistant out to drop off the cookies and and that About Me packet. But most agents don't have that luxury. So do it face to face and win the listing.
Beautiful. So I have a question that popped up that came back in my mind because you said this person was out west. So what is the difference between branding and then branding out west, other than branding a cow?
Yeah, you would never have expected it. It caught us by surprise. but I've got to build the story. Can I build the story a little bit?
Please.
Okay. So we've done these 21 marketing tests. By the way, if you go to either my websites, Get Sellers Calling You or Agent Dominator, you're going to have a pop-up page that says, we've done these 21 marketing tests. They're top 5. 3 of those top 5 each produced over 800% increased results over the control group. Give us your name and email and we'll email it to you. So let me encourage you to get that. But what we learn, and this is the last one of those tests that we show, is using this direct response, which is what we did when we came out the gate in geofarming. Using a direct response on the eastern seaboard, we got great results all up and down the eastern seaboard, from New York down to Virginia, down to Florida, and everywhere in between. But as we noticed that as we started to go out west in the United States, and I think I can't say for Canada because we don't use our postcard product in Canada. So this is just US only. As we started going out west, you start to get to New Mexico, you get to Arizona, you get to California, you go up the western seaboard, the results started to plummet. And it was a conundrum because we'd have results that would pop up. People, another person makes $100,000 his first year with us. And then in his farm, this guy I'm thinking of, 1,500 home farm, in 18 months, he's at 22% market share.
Wow.
And in another 18 months, he's at 50% market share. We contributed the most of it at the beginning, and then he carried it from there. But then we would have his next door neighbor agents, agents in that same brokerage would pick farms next door to where he was farming, and absolutely no results. I mean, zero. And we couldn't figure it out, but we realized this was critical business to figure it out. So after a long period, we even engaged a research group to help provide statistical analysis to this. We're able to find the missing link. And that missing link was trust. But it's not what most people think of when we call trust. We coined the phrase a trusting community. And it has one of 2 characteristics. Because then we started to apply the same conclusion to the other farms in the east that were totally flat, and right next to a farm that was totally good. And when we applied this element, it solved all of the problems, okay? And the element, we coined the phrase called a trusting community. A trusting community has one of 2 characteristics. Either one of these works. Number one, the people in that farm grew up in that farm, went to elementary school in that farm, okay? So you think of, Dave, have you ever watched Andy Griffith's show?
Yeah.
Okay, it's the old black, yeah, back in the day, the old black and white, okay? Those are the TV shows I grew up with. But in the Andy Griffith show in Mayberry, they would never lock their doors. Why? In those old days, everyone grew up there, went to school there, worked there, married there, had children, they did. And so everyone knew everyone, and it was very trusting. But once you get into an environment where you have transplant coming in from other places, now they're new in that environment, and there's not that level of trust because they don't really know the people. Even in my neighborhood where I live now, the neighbors don't know each other. They're all transplants from different places. And so you have a non-trusting neighborhood, non-trusting community. So what we realized is you had to develop trust. Trust is either developed by, over a period of time, this educational approach of outside perception versus inside reality, or you meet them. Or we found one other element. If you're sending a just sold postcard every month for a year and a half, 2 years, and it has that distinct branding to it so that when they get it, they recognize it as you. Now they trust you because you're always there, or they've met you in person. Now they trust you because they go, oh, I know that person. He's so nice. Or they trust you because over a period of time, there's been this educational approach of outside perception, inside reality. And it's it's that element of trust. Once you break through that trust, then it's gold. That may be a long answer to your short question, but that's what we found between East and West.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And it's interesting that that was a Western thing.
So do you know why it's a Western thing?
No.
Okay, so you have to understand the history of America. We were founded on the Eastern Seaboard. We were initially colonies of England, which is on the Eastern Seaboard. And then you have what's called the Wild West, okay, because there was nothing. And then you have the frontier people. They were the ones that moved west. And in order to be a frontiersman, you had to be self-dependent. And you had to fight for yourself, fend for yourself. And so there's this great level of independency. And it's a level of, you stay away, let me handle my own stuff. I can handle it myself. Where in the East, it's all about community and society, where it's all integrated and interdependent. Out West, everyone is independent. So you have this
That makes sense to
attitude.
me.
Yeah.
That makes
And,
sense.
and so that's what's happened is the West was populated by independent thinkers, independent nature, and you have to break through that or you just don't win their trust.
Yeah, like ranchers, farmers, communities that built off of that rather than in a metropolitan area. See, my mind automatically thinks metropolitan area. You're in Boston, you're in New York, you're in, Chicago, and they're like they don't trust anybody because they have the street smarts. You know what I
Right.
mean?
So we've tested that too. Can I share the
Please.
simple answer? The closer you get to the center of the metropolitan area, the less trust they have.
There you go.
You move away from the center of metro, and now you're in the suburbs, and now you get more trust.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it really is.
So when you're planning, the people listening and watching, when you're planning on your choosing your farming area, keep that in mind. That's another thing to think about.
It's a very important thing to think about.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right, great. So is there anything with regard to geographic farming? And I know that your business serves, other areas as well, but we've focused on geographic farming here because I think it's really fascinating, especially the, level of detail that you're bringing into it. And perhaps I can have you on again and we can talk about other things. But with regard to geographic farming, is there something else an agent's thinking about getting in there? Number one, they have to choose their farm wisely according to what we had discussed earlier. Number two, make sure you budget for the length of time and the amount of homes that you're sending it to. What else should people really keep in mind if they're planning on going the geographic farming route?
Um, more touches and more variety grows your results dramatically. Um, so if you rely strictly on postcard, it can and will work, but it just takes more time. If you want faster growth, you have to touch that farm in other areas. We did a podcast. You can go to my podcast, Get Sellers Calling You, and look down toward the in the 20s range in terms of series episodes. And I did a series on, there is a 2 podcast series on the top 10 things you can do to touch your farm that are low cost or free. These are just additional touches. The idea is to engage with your farm more ways than just postcards, so they get a chance to know you and trust you and actually get a chance to meet you. You can do it with social media. My friend I was telling you about, that 18% of the farm controlled it in 18 months, 22%. What happened with him is he had a 3-prong attack. So it's a closed community. It's called Horse Thief Canyon. And at the time, they had a Facebook community page, but it was poorly attended. Only 200 people subscribed to the page, and there's 1,500 homes there. So when we got started, the first thing he did is he went door knocking and met the people and left flyers to point them towards the Facebook community page, because he realized that was a key to ongoing exposure, ongoing touches. So over the year, he door knocked it 3 times, I think. Got the Facebook community page from 200 to over 800 to 1,000. Then he was active on the Facebook community page. Every listing, he milked it 3 or 4 or 5 times. Coming soon, just listed, open house, under contract, just sold. And he could do that on the Facebook community page without overbearing the rules, because it's community news.
Right.
But every time he put that out, it's him. And people don't really see it as coming soon, just listed as the same home. They thought, oh, that guy's active in real estate here. And then he also became the administrator of that Facebook community page. And so anytime someone would sign up, a new person, he would also friend them on his personal Facebook page. And so now all of this sales transaction he's doing, he's pushing out on his Facebook page. He's pushing out his transactions in Horse Thief Canyon on the community page. And what happened is they saw him in the mail, they responded, they see him in Facebook, they've met him, and that level of activity just catapulted him. And he went from less than 1%, just the average listing agent, less than 1%, that in 18 months, he was doing 22%, which was 7 times more than the number 2 agent, just to give the disparity. And then 18 months after that, he was 50% of all the listings. So whatever you do is engage them in multiple channels, multiple methods. For our clients, we like to append the list. So we have phone number and email. And then that way you can do custom audiences with Facebook and run Facebook ads directly to that list. You can do video email to that list and give them short video updates, because chances are you're not meeting all of them, and especially if you're afraid to go door knocking. So the video email gives you a chance for them to see you in full live person, your personality, and get it delivered to them. So all these things are incrementally increasing their trust around you so that you become a trusting community for you.
Fantastic. See, when we did your podcast and you were interviewing me, we were talking about systems and really getting your systems together. And then whatever method of business you choose, you need to have a complete system of,
Yes,
getting the lead, following up, all the different touch points. And that's what you're talking about right now. It's a complete system. You have to do, it's not just, a one-dimensional, it's a multi-pronged approach, and it's consistent.
very consistent. That's the key. You have to stay consistent. I remember one of our early clients, she was in a non-trusting community that she was targeting, but she started getting listings, and one of them, the comment was, I know you're a new agent, but you're consistent, and that's why I called you, because we're in the mail consistently all the time. And I thought that was really brilliant. Just they chose a new agent because she's consistent. And don't underestimate. Here's what happens too. Homeowners recognize when you're consistent and then you stop. And it makes an impression. It's the same level of impression that when you have a home that sits too long on the market, homeowners start asking, buyers start asking, why is it on the market so long?
Yeah,
There
what's wrong
must
with
be
that home?
something wrong,
Yeah.
right? And so homeowners judge you the same way. So you need to stay consistent and make sure that what you're doing is consistent like clockwork, because they recognize it.
Fantastic. Well, that's pretty much our time here right now. Thank you so much, Beatty, for all the wonderful information and insights. Once again, plug away, tell people how they can find your podcast, how they can find you if they are looking for your services.
Perfect. So two websites, 2 channels. That's all you need. Get Sellers Calling You is our podcast. So if you're a podcast listener, pull it up and hit subscribe. GetSellersCallingYou.com is the resource for that podcast and has some additional stuff. And then if you want to learn about our services where we apply this stuff for you in inexpensive methods, if you want to do kind of more do it yourself, or all the way to we do it all for you, and we're actually probably the only company I know of in the real estate industry, we guarantee your listings or we'll give your money back, because it is a process. And that is agentdominator.com, agentdominator.com.
All right, fantastic. Again, thank you so much for your insight and sharing all this wonderful information with everybody. Guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, share this podcast and video channel with everybody that you know that's looking to take their business to the next step. Thanks again. This has been the Real Estate Agent Advantage. Take care.